Today I would like to focus at looking at the shoulder blade, the scapula. So the first one that we have here to look at is in a standing limb. So we have this articulated in a standing position. So you can see its position in relation to the humerus. So this is a part of the limb that sits right against the rib cage of the horse. Sometimes can be quite immobile if the horse is not moving correctly. And what I want to look at today is how the scapula is positioned in the body and how we can affect that with our riding, or how it can be affected through injury and all of that sort of stuff. So as you can see here, the scapula itself, when the horse is standing, isn't actually straight in the body, it is slightly angled. Now we're looking at the right front leg, so the offside front leg of a horse here. You can see down here is the shoulder joint itself. So that is right at the base of your neck, the shoulder there. You can see that the shoulder joint itself is a ball and socket in the way that the scapula and the humerus articulate with each other. They sit right on top of one another there, and it looks like quite a loose, open kind of connection. The way that those two bones are connected together to reduce the ball and socket range of motion in the joint is actually with the biceps tendon that connects onto this part of your scapula, runs down through these two ridges here, and holds those two bones in place in incredible strength to prevent a lot of rotational capability within that joint. Of course, there's a lot of other soft tissue around the joint that helps to keep it stable, but that biceps tendon has a great role to play in stabilizing the joint. In horses that have shoulder dysplasia, I have seen that biceps tendon is actually quite compromised, which allows for excessive motion through the shoulder joint. So back to the scapula itself, you can see that we have this big a pointy piece of bone at the back of the scapula here. Now this is really important for us as riders because where this sits in the body and where it articulates, because obviously the scapula will move and it will rotate backwards as the horse is in motion. That part of the scapula can be affected by fit of a saddle. Not only that, but what we have over the top of the scapula, which you can't really see here, in a live horse we actually have cartilage that sits, depending on the build of the horse and their own conformation and stuff, it can be quite high, it can be quite shallow, but it creates a rounded top to the scapula, which we commonly see in anatomy books and drawings and that sort of stuff. So what you can see here at the top of this scapula is all of this corally-like bone that is actually preserved cartilage. So you can see this hard line through here is the end of the bone, and then the cartilage over the top that has calcified for this skeleton. There's not a whole lot of it there. Sometimes there's none, sometimes there is more. But that cartilage that sits over the top of the shoulder blade can also be deeply affected, not only by saddle fit, poor saddle fit, but also it can be affected if the horse has an injury where perhaps they fall on their wither, they get some kind of, they could have a rotational fall, they could get stuck underneath something. Possibly even that cartilage can be affected by loading forces pulling on the top of the shoulder blade unevenly for an extended period of time. So cartilage, if you want to know the kind of consistency that we're working with here in the top of the horse's shoulder blade, it is a little bit like the outside of your ear. So if you have a little play with that, you can feel how soft that material can be. So as I said, this skeleton here has quite a fair bit of that has disintegrated in the process of cleaning, which is generally what we find. Now I have another example down here of a skeleton that has not done away with those bits of cartilage. So this is, let's start with this scapula, because this is the same. This is an offside or a right front leg of a different horse. So this is the same orientation as the upright scapula we were just looking at, but you can see how much cartilage is left at the top of this bone, right? You can see clearly the line through here where the bone ends, across through there, and then everything above that is the cartilage from that skeleton. Now you can see that a lot of it looks like coral. right? You can see the striations. Let me see if I can pull the focus. There we go. You can see all of that beautiful little corally texture that he has going on in the top of his shoulder blades there. But what I find very fascinating about this skeleton is the question of why. Why would he calcify all of that all of that cartilage into basically bone? So if we flip him over, we can see on the underside, now the same thing, you can see the line where the bone itself of the scapula ends through here. You can see the corally consistency. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this focus as I get closer. You can see the coral consistency here. Now this is at the front of his shoulder blade. But as we come towards the back here, you can see that that actually becomes solid. And what we have through here is almost like folds in the cartilage that have calcified. So I wonder for this horse whether we actually had some kind of a break in the cartilage or some kind of trauma, force, loading, something happened that made the body want for this soft piece of cartilage to become hyperstable and become bone. So that's his offside front leg. Let me show you his near side front leg. So this is the left shoulder blade, and same thing, you can see the top of the scapula through here, and that line through there, and everything above that we are looking at calcified cartilage. Now again, as you look at the top of that cartilage, you can see that there is a fold right there. More folds as we come towards the back, and again solid calcification through there. We also have this line, this ridge running through here, which I wonder if that's a fracture of the cartilage, or if that is a break in itself. Whatever it is that we're looking at, it's not what the body should have done in a perfect world, but it is what his body decided it needed to do in order to create a little bit of stability, to be able to trust that his body could do the job that it needed to do at the time. So they are just two variations of how a shoulder can be changed within the body. Now, I do want to say this horse, he was in his 30s when he was put to sleep. So this is something that potentially has built over a long time. He had been using this body for quite some time. And so there are a lot of changes. He had a very active life. There are a lot of changes through his body. So it's not necessarily something that you need to be looking at in your very young horses, but it is something that you want to keep in mind, because shoulder blades, where they are positioned in the body, they do come in contact with us as riders, with the gear that we need to use. And also, when you think about the requirements of the lift of the chest and the thoracic sling, these shoulder blades play a huge part. And so we want to be able to keep them as healthy and functional as possible.